Live from the Clarity from Chaos studios, heard worldwide, it's Dave Campbell. And so Dave and his guest explore, discuss, and work on solutions to some of life's biggest challenges. So, if you're ready, be prepared to be enlightened, amused, and even shocked by what you hear. And now, the real, the authentic, the one and only Dave Campbell.
Welcome, everyone, to another truth-telling session on Clarity from Chaos. From drag queens to woke ideology to DEI, the military cannot seem to solve its recruiting crisis. Here to discuss the issue, the author of the best-selling book, Tiny Blunders, Big Disasters, 39 Tiny Mistakes That Changed the World Forever, Jared Knott. Jared was a decorated combat infantry officer in Vietnam. Welcome, sir.
Good. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
So explain to my audience, Jared, the butterfly effect.
Yes, there was a famous politician, mathematician back in the 1950s named Lorenz, Professor Lorenz, and he was working with a formula for predicting the weather. There was a number with a decimal point and 18 numbers behind it. And it was taking the computers of the day long time to run the number. So what gee whiz, 18 numbers are old tiny numbers. Past the decimal, makes whack off about 12 of them, and we just be at a decimal point with 6 numbers, and it was not going to make much difference. Well, anyway, they ran the computer program. He was just amazed at the difference it made in the final outcome. It was like a series of dominoes in a progression, one hitting the other. And so he made this presentation to a group of mathematicians. And he said this would mean that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil could set off a chain reaction that could lead to a cyclone in Texas a year and a half later. It's a little bit of an overstatement, but it was the basic principle of this multiplier effect. Well, you take that same sort of thing, you apply it, the same idea, you apply it to human history, and you find example after example of a single tiny mistake that dominoed into something else, and had this catastrophe at the end. And thus the whole theme of the book, Tiny Blunders, Big Disasters, 39, but now there's many more tiny mistakes that created disaster, changed the world forever.
So maybe you could share just a couple of the tiny oopses and what happened in the aftermath.
Yes, one of the very first ideas I thought of way back when was a teaser of it is that a single piece of tape rotated several inches the wrong direction changed the outcome of the Vietnam War. The United States might very well have won except for this single tiny mistake, which doesn't make any sense. Right? What are we talking about? That has to do with the Watergate break-in. James McCord and the Cuban operatives, they were jimmying the door from the parking garage into the office building. They were told to hold a striker on the door down with a single piece of tape in the vertical position so it could not be seen from the hallway. They made a mistake and they put it in the horizontal position. You see this, by the way, in the movie All the President's Men, and therefore Frank Wills, by the way, he plays himself in the movie way back when. He comes walking down the hallway. What's this? Tape on the door. Oh, the door has been jimmied. He calls the Washington, D.C. police. I think he had to call them twice. Anyway, there's a strong rumor that the uniformed officer on duty that particular night in that part of the city was intoxicated in a local bar and was unable to respond to the call. So they had to send instead the bum patrol, 3 officers dressed as hobos in a jalopy car. They pull up to the Watergate complex, and the lookout does not recognize them as police officers. So they cannot alert James McCord and the operatives on the inside. So they come in, they arrest James McCord, and Watergate starts happening one after the other, boom, 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 all the implications of Watergate. Henry Kissinger gave an interview back at the time, and he said that the plan was to go in and bomb the North Vietnamese back into submission. They knew that they were going to be continuing to test the treaty to get them into compliance. The idea was to bomb the daylights out of them, just like they had before, to get them to the peace table in the first place. But they were so weak politically they couldn't. South Vietnam collapses, Nixon administration collapses, it all falls apart because of a single piece of tape rotated several inches the wrong direction and a drunk cop.
That begs the question. I wonder if the current administration, I wonder what their tiny mistake is going to end up being that pulls down the entire fiasco of what's happening right now with the Bidens.
Yeah, the Hunter Biden situation, as you well know, is starting to spin way out of control. We had the two whistleblowers that have come forward and said that there was a slow walk cover up, and
right,
and of course the immensity of that scandal, where we have the Chinese government, our biggest opponent in the world, putting millions of dollars through shell corporations, wanting to get the money to the Biden family, and the big guy was getting his share allegedly. That is a huge, huge scandal. I mean, millions of dollars.
right.
President of the United States on the take. Again, we also have the thing with Ukraine, also implications there on the take, and also $3.5 million brought over, given Hunter Biden from the widow of the mayor of Moscow. So there's money coming in from Russia, lots of money coming in from China, money coming in from Ukraine, and a lot of whistleblowers, loud, shrill whistleblowers. But now the mainstream media is starting to pick up the story. Washington Times, Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC, NBC, I understand, are running the story. Here we have Hunter Biden saying, "I'm sitting right next to my father, and you better come up with the money, or there's going to be trouble." I'm the person who keeps grudges. So,
yeah,
and then also they're trying to verify that they were co-located, Biden and his father at the same location, but they're not permitted to do that. And the whole thing is getting real ugly, and thank gosh that we have control of the House of Representatives that can pursue that sort of thing aggressively.
Yeah, exactly. So let me kind of get us back on track here. What do you think the root cause is, in your estimation, for the recruiting crisis? Because I could name a number of things, but what do you think the root cause is, Jared?
Yeah, I would say, of course, there's a combination of causes, but number one is that there's a labor shortage just in general. The federal government, of course, spread out a whole bunch of money, a lot of federal checks going out there. Money was easy. All of that money is still in the people's savings account that discouraged people from working. But I don't have to work so much because here's all these federal checks and easy money, etc. So just the average company out there is having a hard time getting employees. And of course, the United States military is also having that same problem for that same reason, is a shortage of labor. Now, the U.S. military has another problem, is that their deployments sometimes have people away from their family for 6 months at a time, at sea 6 months at a time, or in some place, foreign place in the world, away from their friends, away from their family. So it's a tougher duty, sometimes dangerous duty. So they have an added burden there. That would be at the top of the list. It's also a kind of a cultural issue there.
Yeah.
I think, put the moral issue completely aside, just talking about from a marketing standpoint, having the transgender individual shown in a transgender garb and then switching over to the Navy uniform, that was a horrible, horrible marketing mistake, because it turns off awful lot of people. It's good old working class people, a lot of times in the South and the Midwest, who enlist people who believe in fundamental American values. Well, that sort of thing can be a big turnoff to the very people they're trying to appeal to. That I do not think is a major issue. Well, it's not the primary issue, but it is a secondary issue. It's getting military is getting a reputation for being a little too woke and a little bit too rainbow, perhaps, and that may be turning people off. But and of course, the draft is long, long gone. Maybe if we brought ROTC back in high schools and colleges, that would help some. Awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to say my thought is it's more of a civics kind of question, of giving back service, to the country that you grew up in, that you raise your family. There's this whole civic piece in there that I think doesn't get discussed much, right? Obviously when the towers went down, everybody was on the national wagon as far as enlisting, going to do something about that. And that whole national pride, whole kind of concept has just been watered down and kind of just floated away, so to speak.
Yes, there's not the patriotism or love of country that we once had. We had it for a while there during 9/11, and a lot of
Right.
people did, in fact, enlist during that period because the country kind of needed to pull together back in World War II after Pearl Harbor was bombed. Of course, that same feeling that we're under attack, we need to support each other and pull together. That is not there now, and it's almost that's very unfashionable in a lot of groups to be patriotic. If you show the flag too much or wear a flag pin or something like that, some people criticize you. It's thought of as a Republican thing as opposed to a Democratic thing. So that underlying current of it not being accepted. I'll tell you too, a lot of times what young women think has a big influence on what young men will do. So if the young women
Sure.
are not enthusiastic about it, back in World War II, a man in uniform is an appealing thing. But if young women are not that enamored of people in the military, that's a factor in the overall cultural mix as well. So I don't know this solution. Possibly introducing ROTC programs back into high school and college. On one thought, as I'm sure you've heard, the idea of a lottery in which people have to serve 6 months or a year, or something like that, kind of a national reserve kind of a commitment that might get a certain number of people flowing through military options, a certain number of them would choose to stay, and so on like that. Of course, more money would be a factor as well.
Yeah. Um, so what are your thoughts on the Indian Prime Minister, the events over the last couple of days? Obviously their borders are China and Pakistan, so they're kind of sandwiched in, you know, the part of the evil empire, I guess, is part of the term. And so I'm just wondering, are we starting to posture with the Indian government to maybe help them buffet the China piece that's sitting on their borders and possibly, what's coming over, in Pakistan?
Yes, they, of course, a democracy, a large democracy. The idea of them being an alternative to China, some factories relocating there, possibly as opposed to China, also relocating to Vietnam and other places. They're a partner in that part of the world that we very much want to develop. Now, they have not shown a big willingness to stand with us. I think they were buying oil from Russia when we would not like them to do that. I'm not sure how willing they are to stand with us in these critical situations, but having them as a partner is very, very important.
Well, China's dumping millions, if not billions, of dollars with their economic policies into Afghanistan, Pakistan, and everything else. They're dumping millions into Africa with their
Voice program.
with their economic programs. So they're making a pretty broad global reach to start getting a lot of these countries, basically on the hook for all of the money that they're bringing in. So I wonder, I kind of shudder with the current administration if we really have the best and the brightest to be, combating what's going on here, which kind of makes me a little bit skeptical.
Well, back during the Trump administration, people, you say what you want to about Trump, but we had a China initiative, and we had a strong pushback against the Chinese. We had people being arrested who were acting as agents for the Chinese. We had people being expelled from the country. We were doing a lot of things to keep them under control and to push them back. And now that program is much, much weaker. Of course, the balloon just being one little tiny example, but there's
Sure.
not much pushback going on. Of course, the question that comes to mind is all these millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars coming across from the Chinese government, going through the shell corporations, being paid to the Biden family, a big guy getting his share directly or indirectly, his bills being paid by his son or whatever like that. You have to wonder, are they going soft on China because they're in their pocket, they're receiving all these tens of millions of dollars. And so maybe that's part of the reason why we're not more aggressive in dealing with the Chinese, which is a very scary prospect.
Yeah, I know that they've been also dumping what is it, the Belton Road, their Belton Road projects and stuff like that globally, trying to win favoritism. In the Middle East, they're brokering all kinds of things as well, and it's pretty scary that we've kind of just given over our leadership to world strategy, I guess. And I have to agree with you. I wonder. Obviously, it's not been proven, but it certainly has the appearance of somebody being extremely compromised in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the basic numbers that are known, basic facts that are known. It is known that of course, with us having control of the House of Representatives, we can have the subpoena power. We can look at I say we, they can look at the bank records, and they have the proof that the Chinese government or Chinese interests paying money into the shell
Right.
corporations, 22 shell corporations. Why did they go to all the trouble to create all these shell corporations that cost money and time and effort? Why? Well, so there would be it's a P and shell game. We paid in this shell corporation, paid into others, paid into others, paid into others. It was very difficult to follow the money. Then at the end, it comes out on the other side, and it's being paid to members of the Biden family. Well, what was the principle? So what's your explanation? What are you selling? Are you selling trucks? Are you selling grain? What are you getting in exchange for those billions of dollars? Are you selling influence?
Exactly.
You say he's having influence. It's just such a 2 + 2 = 4 situation, just undeniable. And that's only part of it all. Then also the investigation being slow walked, the outrageous email. I'm sitting here right next to my dad. You better pay up the money, or
Yeah.
I'm going to keep a big grudge. And they can, with the investigation, they can probably find that they were co-located together. They were not allowed to check that out to see if they were, but I bet you $1 that they were. And that's just uglier than ugly. I mean, there's a huge amount of evidence to show that we have I hate to say it, but President of the United States on the take from our biggest enemies.
Yeah, it would certainly put Watergate, um, make Watergate very, very small in comparison to what we're hearing. Um, it goes a lot further than what Nixon was trying to do with his political enemies. Um, I don't even can't even comprehend the magnitude of where this is going, because it seems like everybody's in on it, Jared. It all we get is a bunch of kabuki theater, and it just seems like the entire District of Columbia knows about all of this, and it's just we're being we're all just kind of having to go along with it.
Yes. Now, one of the most powerful forces in the world is the mainstream media here in the United States, and as long as the Democratic Party, the uh, whole Russia hoax Mueller investigation was one great big mushball. It had massive publicity behind it. The evening news with David Muir every night, week after week, breaking news, so on and so forth, like the 100 Mueller investigations. And it turns out there was absolutely nothing there.
It was
On the
nothing
other
but,
side,
yeah.
you had big zero, great big mushball. And on the other side of the equation, when there's a huge amount of there, okay, ignore it completely. And
Yeah,
so it's just an upside down
exactly.
kind of world. But now it's getting to be, there's signs that's getting to be so large. And of course, we do have the House of Representatives with the committee doing the investigation with the subpoena power. And it's getting to be so large, there's a serious chance that it might blow in the open. And it's, at the very least, it's going to cause some serious political damage going into the elections next year. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
that they get suppressed or not, because the lid's starting to come off the boiling pot. That memo, I mean, it goes to the whole cliche, you can't make this stuff up, truth is stranger than fiction, but that email is, I'm sitting right here next to my father, and you better pay up that money that we agreed on, or I'm the person that holds grudges. It's going to be really serious. And then a few days later, he gets 100,000. Another 5 days after that, he gets $10 million. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, that's not a smoking gun; it's a smoking cannon. especially if they can collate the two of them in the same location. So it's starting to, I'm not sure, I can't say it's going to blow up for sure, because you still have very powerful interests trying to suppress it, but it's starting to get uglier and uglier every day.
No, it absolutely is. So let's talk a little bit about the African leaders that have kind of come into play now, that have, moved, gone in and talked with Russia and everything else. It just seems like all the major powers now are jockeying for Africa. And I'm sure it's because of the resources.
Yeah, the rare earths that are there, that's becoming
Right.
most important. You're talking about a lot of money being paid into countries that are not wealthy countries, where the money is critically important to them. A lot of decisions can be turned the wrong way based on those influences from Russia and from primarily from China. That's something that needs to be aggressively pursued. And as I said before, with the China initiative, we're getting some aggressive action. Without the China initiative and the Biden administration, I get the feeling there's not a huge amount of energy being put into those programs. And again, you have to go back to the same thing. You have an administration where they've taken millions of dollars at the top from the Chinese. Does that mean that they're going slow in a lot of these programs that would hurt the Chinese interests? That's a terrible thought. That is a very serious possibility.
Yep, absolutely. So where can people go to find your book, Jared?
Yes, you can go to tinyblundersbigdisasters.com, tinyblundersbigdisasters.com, and we have a website there. We have 2.5 free chapters. We have a book trailer, and we also have a portrait gallery with 27 personalities with a little bit of dirt on each one. So I'm kind of kidding when I say that, but anyway, it's kind of a fun website, and you can go there. And the book has been on the bestseller list, I'm happy to say, for Amazon for 2.5 years. We've sold at won 6 awards. We've sold 22,000 copies, so I've been extremely pleased with the results, and it's a fun book to read.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking to Mr. Jared Knott, who's the best-selling author of Tiny Blunders, Big Disasters, 39 Tiny Mistakes That Changed the World Forever. Thank you so much, Jared, for being a guest.
I appreciate it very much. Thanks, sir.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to listen to more Clarity from Chaos shows on demand, go to clarityfromchaos.buzzsprout.com or send Dave an email at info@clarityfromchaos.com for information on previous shows. You can also listen to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Twitter, or Google Podcast. Until next time, please remember, it's not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Be well, everyone.